Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on this webinar. I'm Jonathan May. I'm one of the founders of Hubbub Fundraising, mostly out in the UK, but often in the US as well. The webinar is entitled How to Raise or How to Run a $100,000 crowdfunding campaign. And what we're going to talk about here is how to use digital fundraising, crowdfunding, and a little bit about giving days as well to leverage networks and raise money online. For those of you who are dialing in on the phone number, if you could please make sure you're muted. We've had a few issues in the past with sound quality, and you can mute yourselves by dialing *6 on your keypad. So please do. If we have any issues with the sound, we'll repeat that, of course, during the webinar as well. Please do ask questions throughout as they come to you using the questions interface that you should be able to see in front of you. We are collating these into a document and we'll be getting to these. Any that we don't cover during the webinar, we'll also make sure to answer afterwards. Finally, the PDF guide on which this webinar is based is in the handout section on the right-hand side of your screen if you're on a desktop. And you can access it there. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Justin, who's doing this webinar with us very kindly, to introduce himself. So Justin, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. I am thrilled to be talking about a couple of topics that mean a lot to me. Crowdfunding for sure, big crowdfunding campaigns with the six-figure plus goals. It's very exciting to be talking about that because we've seen a lot of success in that space, and I know that there's few better people to talk about that than Jonathan and the Hubbub team. So that's great. And also talk about some major gift work in the digital space, using digital to engage major donors. I want to make what I hope will be a convincing argument why digital should be a key component of your major gifts program. I'm president and co-founder of Groundwork Digital. We started this firm about a year ago, in large part because we saw an opportunity to use digital for major gift work, and there weren't a whole lot of folks using digital for major gift work. So some of our biggest and best engagements right now have digital at the forefront. We're engaging large gift donors, major gift donors in that space, and we're really excited to talk about that today. So I won't take any more time. At this point, Jonathan, I'm going to hand it back to you so we can get right into the programming.
Thank you, Justin. So as I said, do ask those questions as they come up. The way we're going to run this is I'm going to do a brief presentation. I'm going to take a couple questions from Justin. I'm going to hand back to Justin to do a brief presentation as well, ask him a couple of questions, and we'll have an audience Q&A session towards the end, 10-15 minutes, depending on exactly how much time we have left. So please do ask those questions, and we will get to them. So thank you. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. As you can see, there's a very fetching photo of me on the far right-hand side when I was a very small child. So I'm a lifelong amateur fundraiser. I've spent most of my childhood and my adult life fundraising for various causes. I've loved doing it. My degree was computer science, so I spent a lot of my effort, a lot of the last 10 years working in technology. About 6 years ago, I had the fortunate opportunity to put together my two passions, my lifelong interest in fundraising, and my technology background to start this wonderful company called Hubbub, which I've been running now for the last 6 years. Hubbub works in the space providing technology and support and services programs. Mostly on the technology side, and we'll talk a little more about that in a bit. I'm also an associate partner at More Partnership, one of Europe's leading fundraising consultancies, and I help a number of charities as an advisor and a trustee out here in the UK. Some of you will be interested to know I'm also a foosball player. I play for the Great Britain team, and so if anybody's passionate about that, give me a game sometime. In February, I had the privilege of representing the Winston Churchill Memorial Foundation, the trust out here, doing research on digital advancement strategies in the US, the results of which I'm also sharing a little later in a link on the webinar, so you'll be able to see where that's come from. So that's me. Now, there is a fairly substantial guide attached to this webinar. So the guide on which this was based, as I said, in the handout section. And what I don't want to do is spend the whole of this presentation just reiterating what was in that guide. And so with that in mind, I've drawn out some of the things I think are absolutely key that underpin how you go about building digital engagement in a fundraising context. So I'm going to talk a little bit about them. And then when we get to the Q&A, if there are specific things in the guide that you want to ask about, please do, or about what we've talked about as well. So the first section here is to talk a little bit about models for digital, why they're important, and demonstrate and just run through a couple of models which underpin, in our belief, essentially the next 10 years of communication, perhaps 20 years of communication in digital, and why this is so important to align behind. What models are really useful for, and you know, it's important to say this, is essentially forming ideas and strategy, allowing people to evaluate how programs are working, but in my mind, most importantly, they're useful for getting everybody speaking the same language. And when you look at digital fundraising campaigns, or when you look at digital full stop, most organizations will need to approach this by bringing together lots of different and disparate parts of their organization. So having a model that allows you to bring those parts together, speak the same language, and understand in the same context is vital, because getting communications teams, marketing teams, you know, alumni relation teams, annual, regular giving, depending on which side of the Atlantic you are, getting everybody speaking the same language can be tough, and models let us do that. So the first of these models I want to talk through is really thin in terms of a model, but I want us to start thinking about the difference between conventional communication strategies and networked communication strategies. So if you look at social media, we're very much looking at a networked approach. If you're looking at something like a direct mail campaign or a telephone based campaign, you're looking at quite a centralized approach. So if you look at the slide, you can see we are moving from the more conventional communications, direct marketing strategies on the centralized side on the left, towards a more distributed form of communication when we engage in digital, and in particular in social. And now there's an underpinning reason, which I'm going to cover shortly, why we need to therefore adjust our thinking and our strategies to accommodate that. But just remember that we're not talking us to every individual as an organization. What we're now doing is allowing that network to talk to each other and for itself in the decentralized way. Now, the second of these models, and this I'm going to go into a lot more detail on, and this is at the center of the guide and the theory and the work we do, is borrowed from Geoffrey Moore, who wrote this wonderful book called Crossing the Chasm. It explains how most new technology is taken up in a network. Now, interestingly, it does more than that. It actually also helps us to understand how digital campaigns, fundraising or otherwise, get taken up by social networks, by social media, and by those within them. And so within the context of this model, we often have people who engage very early on in campaigns. He calls them innovators. These are the people who, in the classic B2C technology sense, are people who'd be stood outside the Apple store queuing for 2 days waiting for the new phone. Well, in a fundraising campaign, these will tend to be your trustees, they'll tend to be board members, staff members, people who are super involved already. They've bought into the idea or the concept. Then you'll have people called, who he calls early adopters, and these are people who really just want to be first. Okay, so if they land on a crowdfunding page and it says £0 or $0, they're the people that are very happy to be the first person to put money in. So they'll often still be people you know, but they won't necessarily be people who are deeply connected to the cause already. And what excites them is going first. And then you get into everybody else, and everybody else is formed of really three groups: early majority, late majority, and what we call laggards. Now, the early majority are people who essentially want to engage because there is a degree of proof. There is somebody else like them, or somebody they can see, who has already engaged, who's already participated in some way in that campaign. The late majority are looking for a lot of proof. They're looking that they are maybe the 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th person in their friendship group to have got involved in that campaign. And the laggards are the people who, in the digital space, we use the word FOMO, the fear of missing out. They feel very much like they're the very last people to get involved, and their reason for getting involved is because they're going to be left behind. And what you see in the early, late majority groups and in the laggards group is that increasing degrees of what we call social proof are required to get people to engage. So this is seeing that others have done it and deciding as a result to participate. The reason this is important when you translate it into a fundraising context is that our traditional channels of communication using direct marketing work very, very well for innovators and early adopters. Those we can already talk to, those we already know are interested. Perhaps our propensity modeling has told us that they're a great potential donor. What our traditional models work really badly for is demonstrating social proof. So sending a direct mail out, but also somehow proving in that direct mail that others have already engaged and got involved in it. And this is ultimately the reason why social is such a magical way of running this kind of campaign. Because social media, for the first time in history, has given us an opportunity to get people to demonstrate the social proof to others, talk about the campaign that they've supported and are involved in, advocate for it, and become ambassadors. And this is why the very best of giving days, the very best of crowdfunding, have these huge networks of people that get engaged, involved, advocate for the cause, and talk about the cause that matters to them. So this model is really important, and if you're trying to talk to people within your organization about why you need to think a little differently, there's a really simple model. It's been well understood and well studied, and it's a really great communications tool to get people on board. So I'm going to talk a little about the implications of this. Okay, so if you go back to the direct marketing approach and you think about what you need to do to scale that, that involves scaling the data that you hold and how rich that data set is. Because you need to start looking at things like predictive modeling, prospect discovery, and trying to identify the people that it is worth spending lots of time, money, and effort reaching out to in a direct way. It also in the UK in particular, and Canada and Australia will be really heavy on this too. It also means an awful lot of compliance, particularly when you're collecting vast quantities of personal information. That's a little softer in the US, but frankly, it's just good practice to make sure that you've got really compliant systems and people are happy with the information that you're actually gathering on them. And because you're competing so heavily against other organizations for attention, you have to innovate with the content that you create all the time in order to get attention from the audiences. It's a highly competitive process. That's not to say it's worse in any way, it's just to say it's a different model. And many fundraising organizations are running very, very good, scaled up, direct, centralized approaches to fundraising. But in social, it changes the game. And the way that we need to approach how to scale those offerings, again, itself changes. So we need to look at, instead of the data, the predictive modeling, the prospect discovery, we need to look at better, positive, relevant, impactful storytelling. So more stories. We need to look at delegated voice. So we need to look at how people tell that story in their own words. And so it's about losing control, letting it go a little bit, but still being very clear about the messaging that you're using. And it's also about having really joined up communications and fundraising. So if your marketing team or your staff on that side are not aligned with the fundraising messages you're putting out, it's very visible from the outside. People see it and see straight through it. So it's very important to have everybody bought in. And as a result, it's a very collaborative approach that you need to take, and you need to bring people within the remit of the organization. So getting people on side as part of your team of advocates and ambassadors. And as a result, we do need new ways of managing this. I'll mention that Hubbub spend a lot of effort in this space, and so I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Just to summarize here, we've gone on to the next slide. Social proof, to generate that, what we're trying to do is convert existing supporters, so people that we know, and people that sign up during a campaign, into more than supporters. We want them to become advocates, okay? And turning them into advocates is about having great content, fantastic stories, getting the timing right, so engaging them well before a campaign if we know that they're already engaged with it. So getting them signed up, getting them agreeing to becoming these ambassadors or these advocates. And it's also about using the right channels. This is a bit of an interesting one. If your advocates and your ambassadors currently are expecting to hear from you in a particular way, you don't need to change that for digital, right? If people are already expecting to get a phone call from you every year and that's how they give, that's fine. But but when it comes to reaching the new audiences, try and work out how we will activate that person on digital as well. So can we send them an email receipt that links back to the page that we've represented their gift on? Can we find a way of getting them to talk to other people that they know whilst we're on the phone with them? In the digital space, this also means having really, really solid communication channels that we can track and monitor as well. So storytelling, just a couple of words. The single most important thing on this slide here is the word positive. We all are familiar with those fundraising campaigns which effectively tell us that if we don't contribute, something awful is going to happen. Those are really, really great stories for getting people to take a one-off action, giving for the very first time or giving as a one-off gift. They're really, really bad at getting people to retell those stories, to take them and talk to others, because nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news, particularly on social media. And so it's really important when we use social media and we want people to become advocates and ambassadors, that the stories we're telling are framed in a positive way. So take that story about if you don't give and something awful is going to happen, or something awful is happening so you should give, and reframe it as if you give, look at the impact we can make on this massive problem, look at the lives we can change. It's really important to frame things positively because everybody does want to be the bearer of good news. Now, as I said, I wasn't going to talk an awful lot about all the content in the guide because it's written there and I don't want to spend a lot of time covering it. Those models and those thoughts are the main things I wanted to cover. But there are a few things I want to signpost. I mentioned I'd talk a little bit about my research in the US and Canada. We'll be distributing this afterwards in any case, but the top link there, the Wildfire Manifesto, is the results of the work that I did for the Winston Churchill study out in the US, covering how to use digital for advancement and fundraising. This has been fairly widely distributed, including within the CASE network here in Europe. I'd like to also signpost to the Hubbub blog. There's a lot of content there about how to engage with people, covering things like user personas, simulation of crowdfunding campaigns. There's a lot there that adds value. There's also a community listserv set up for crowdfunding in the non-profit space. It's called Crowdfund List. Please do join if you have questions about that. I mentioned I was going to talk very briefly about a tool that Hubbub's built in order to manage those social media advocates, the ambassadors that we talk about. So there's a link there to our ambassadors tool. We're also going to post a link to have a look in the chat section on the webinar now. So if you'd like to check that out, have a demo booked or whatever it is, please do go to that link and have a look. There's also a number of other tools. So if you're wondering who my ambassadors actually are and how I research them, again, we've built a tool which you can look at, the social data research tool. It's completely free to use, so do submit as many requests as you like. We've got people using that from all over the world to research their existing social media audiences in more detail. And finally, my contact details are right there at the bottom. That's my Twitter handle, Jonathan May. My email address is there, so if you'd like to reach out, please do. And with that said, I think that's my 13 odd minutes or so up, pretty much bang on. So I'm going to hand over to Justin, who's going to quiz me with a couple of questions. And like I said, please do keep posting questions so that we can make sure we've got good ones for the Q&A later on. So Justin, what would you like to know?
Oh, thanks so much, Jonathan. That was great, and especially the point about positive storytelling. I don't think we see enough of that, and when we do, we see the impact. So really good stuff. Now to the questions. Some of the things that we hear on a pretty regular basis, and I think just good questions generally speaking, when we're building these campaigns and we're looking to do a big crowdfunding effort, how many online ambassadors do we need to make that happen? And how do we know that if we have 100 or 200 online ambassadors, that they are high quality influencers who are actually going to help us broadcast and amplify our message?
Okay, that's a great question. So just putting my water away. So the first thing is to say that whilst there are rules of thumb around, how many ambassadors we think we're going to need in order to reach a certain target, there are a couple of things that are a little bit more important than that, which is ensuring that they are, whoever they are and however many they are, that they are properly briefed and engaged with the campaign. The last thing you want is to hit your entire email list with a please sign up now to our ambassador program when they don't know much about what they're doing or why they're doing it. What you'll end up with then is a number of people that are interested, click through, but have actually not got a particularly high degree of buy-in. So it's really important to make sure that there is effectively a bit of a screening process, a bit of a communication process when you go about getting people to sign up, to make sure that they really are bought in and committed. And with that in mind, that then makes it much easier to look at the numbers. So what I would say is that 10 highly engaged ambassadors is worth an awful lot more than 200 or 300 who've just clicked through and taken a look. So the rules of thumb: 6-figure campaign, $100,000. You'd be looking at sort of somewhere between 50 and 250 online ambassadors. But just bear in mind that, like I said, it's all about quality. So we've actually seen a number of campaigns in the sort of 100K type region that have run with a lot fewer than 50. If you've got people who are making major contributions and becoming advocates and they're active on social media, then it's really important. Then frankly, they'll make a huge contribution. And then in terms of quality, I think this is a lot about the areas in which they're interested in, and I know that I don't want to touch too much on your presentation, Justin, because I know there's some of this in there. But making sure that it's not just that they are influential, but that they are interested in the campaign they're supporting is important. It's worth saying that that when we look for high quality influencers, we don't look for the most connected. So we don't necessarily look for people who've got 100,000 followers on Twitter. We're looking for real human beings with a connection to the cause who are engaged with it. And so what we're looking for are those people who are who are authoritative, probably have a good career background, and therefore influential within their own networks. So I'd say skim over some of the celebrities, get out of that sphere of thinking, and focus on a number of people who are real adult humans who can say things and make a difference to their networks. So sorry, I hope that answers that question fairly well, Justin.
It does, and we have real-world experience that very much backs up what you just said about celebrities. We've had clients that have had well-known movie stars like Martin Sheen, professional athletes like Shane Battier and Ray Allen as online ambassadors. And in the very same campaign, those high-profile celebrity influencers were outperformed by people who were not household names whatsoever, but the people who were not household names really owned that cause and had a network around them individually to embrace that cause. So you're absolutely right. We see that play out with our clients all the time. So we've done all this good, hard, and important work of identifying and engaging online ambassadors. How do we track them to know that they're actually having an impact?
Okay, so this is where I mentioned that there was a necessity to actually run a tool of some kind to keep in touch. Now, at its simplest level, running a network of ambassadors can be done without much monitoring through things as simple as a spreadsheet, where you just make sure that you're communicating regularly with them and make sure you're tracking whether they've replied to you. Now, if you want to know whether or not they've actually shared things, whether people have clicked on them and what impact they've had, you'll need this. You'll need a solution integrated with well, you need a solution to manage them. And if you want to know what impact it's actually had in terms of fundraising outcomes, you'll need that solution to be integrated with your giving offering, whether that's crowdfunding, Giving Day, or some other kind of digital campaign. Hubbub's obviously spent a lot of time thinking about this, working on this, and we have the ambassadors tool. It's integrated with our giving technology. So if you want to know how many clicks someone's generated, how many donations they've caused, and be able to sort of gamify that interface, create leaderboards, and show people as a result what they've managed to do, you'll need a tool to do that. It's not the only tool in the market. I'm aware of a couple of others, so do have a look around. But we're passionate about working in this space, and so we'd love to demo that and show you that if you're interested.
Just a real quick follow-up to that, not to put you on the spot, but I think Hubbub has done some work in this space, and I know we've seen some of it too. Stewardship is one of the 4 aspects. When we do ambassador programs, we have identification phase, engagement phase, deployment phase, and then stewardship phase. So we want to make sure our ambassadors feel taken care of so they come back time and time again, and we can grow the program and keep their networks involved and all of the good things that come with it. When it comes to incentivizing them, how important is it that you show them their activity and their impact as compared to giving them T-shirts or coffee mugs or baseball caps?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm going to be blunt from our experience at Hubbub. The thing that motivates people is to know that they've made a difference, and that's not about the incentivization in terms of gimmicks or giveaways. Those are nice thank yous, but they're part of that person's journey afterwards. People do not tend to compete for a T-shirt, and it's just worth reflecting on the fact that people care about the impact they've had on the campaign. Interestingly, they also seem to care quite a lot about the overall impact on the campaign. So ambassadors will tend to form wonderful teams of people who together can see the impact that they're all having on the campaign. It's much more of a collaborative than a competitive process. That's not to say that giving away things like baseball caps or T-shirts shouldn't happen, but think of that very much as part of the journey that someone can take afterwards as a thank you, not the reason why they got involved in the first place. What matters is they can see the impact that they've had.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so I mean, another reason to track beyond internal purposes is so you can show ambassadors their impact, because that's one of the best ways to keep them coming back for more. Fantastic. So if we're looking at social media data, or any data really, any digital data, to find these online ambassadors, what privacy concerns should we have?
Okay, there's a couple of interesting points in here. So firstly, privacy law obviously is very different in different countries, and so the right way to approach this question is to think about what best practice should be, in a sense. So what the right thing to do is, and the first thing to say is in almost every jurisdiction, whatever the privacy policies that your organization uses should mention that you are intending to use data from social media in order to monitor, in order to evaluate people's interest, in the cause and the organization. So, be upfront, be open about the fact that you are intending to research people, and you're intending to use that data to identify people. In terms of then approaching people or engaging with them on social media, there is a real question about the best way to do what people would expect. Because if you do what people expect on social media, people don't react badly, and you're very low risk in terms of people complaining. So, for example, if one of your followers on Twitter were to get a message from you saying, hey, it looks like you're really interested in this cause, would be willing to become an ambassador for us, that would be expected behavior. But if you used mining to look through a completely different organization's network to identify people who you thought might be of interest, and then you reached out to somebody else's network, that would be an unexpected behavior, and that's the kind of thing that is likely to lead to complaints. So stay within the realms of what people would expect, and be very upfront about the use of the data that you're making. People are very happy when they are told what's going on, and they can choose to opt in or opt out of it. So just be upfront, be honest, and you should be in a very good place.
Fantastic. Good advice across the board. So last but not least, the questions in this phase anyway, before we get into engaging major donors. Uh, if you are doing a big crowdfunding campaign, if you've got a $100,000 plus goal, what percentage of that goal should be on the platform the moment you hit launch and go public with it? How much did you have already pledged, already raised when you launch a big campaign?
Fabulous question. So my view on this is actually that if you go back to the graph, the crossing the chasm model, you actually have a really interesting way of approaching this question. So rather than just sort of saying, oh, it should be 25% or it should be 50%, what you're actually looking at is when should people sign up and engage with this campaign? And what actions do we want them to take? So we already know that there will be two groups of people with motivations to get involved and engage with this campaign well before the thing needs to go public itself. And obviously, Justin, you're going to cover some of the major donor asks, but there are already people that will sign up as ambassadors, and there are already people that will make major gift contributions, challenge contributions, and you do not need to wait until the thing goes live before getting those commitments in. And so, as a rule of thumb, normally we'd say that you're looking at somewhere between 15 and 30%. That's just across our clients. Obviously, if you want to be absolutely confident that you're going to reach your number, getting up into the 40 to 50% sensible. But the thing that that I get sort of frustrated on with this kind of question, and I don't mean that there's a problem with the question, but it sort of misses the point that that an engaged, motivated audience of advocates, ambassadors, is what generates success. And the activities that you need to do to engage that audience are fairly similar to the activities you'll need to do to approach your major donors and get those challenge and matching gifts in. So it's really about just doing the preparation work in advance. You can start a campaign at zero, and you can make it work if you've got the network of support planned out and signed up well in advance. Because there will be people who'd be happy to go first. What you can't do is launch the thing at zero with no network, because it won't work full stop. But we've seen campaigns go public at zero and succeed because of all the work they've done well in advance. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. The people that do the planning will make the thing work, whether it says zero or whether it says $50,000 on day one. It's less about what that number is, it's more about whether there's an engaged audience that's going to promote it. That's our experience in any case, Justin. So I'd be interested in your take too on that one.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. I think you're exactly right that crowdfunding, giving days, all of it is focused around the network. And if you've got a large group of enthusiastic influencers who have a network of folks who are going to step up to the plate to make a gift, I mean, it really doesn't matter. It'll grow like wildfire either way. So definitely, that's the most important piece. Everything else are details and things you can do to help a campaign. But you're right, the network is what matters most.
Fab. Okay, so at this point, we're going to hand over to you, Justin, to run through your presentation, and should be transferring control over in the next few seconds.
Sounds very good. Looking for that now.
Do keep those questions coming in the meantime. We'll get them answered at towards the end of the webinar. Thank you.
All right, here it comes. Here comes my slides. Everyone should now be able to see my screen. Thank you so much, Jonathan. So yes, I want to talk now about a real passion of mine and something that has been a big focus of our work and an increasing focus of our work at Groundwork Digital as we go into our second full year in existence. We launched about 10 months ago now. Major donors, using digital to find more major donors, to engage major donors, to solicit major donors. And one of the things that I really want to leave us with today is this is a way to enhance a major gift program. We are not talking about shifting dollars. We're not talking about moving one group of donors to another pod. We're talking about either increasing giving from your current donors and, most importantly, finding new major gift donors. And here's a few of the reasons why we know we can use digital to do just that. We've talked a lot about ambassadors already. one quick stat from Blackbaud. Large study, thousands of organizations in the nonprofit space, and it says everything I think we need to know to be convinced that online ambassadors are an effective way to raise money. When you send out an email, and that email comes from an online ambassador, that is going to give you a gift about 1 out of every 4 times. So a 25% conversion rate when an email comes from an online ambassador. I don't have to tell anybody who works in fundraising that's an incredible conversion rate. If you take that exact same email, and the only change you make is that you remove the ambassador's name and you put the institution or organization's name in the sender field, the conversion rate drops to 0.08%. It goes from 1 in 4 to 1 in 1,250, 25% to 0.08%. Online ambassador sent emails are 312 times more effective than an email sent from the organization. That might give you pause and wonder if there's any reason to send emails from anyone other than online ambassadors. And honestly, there are a few institutions that have followed this mold, and they have some of the highest participation rates in the country. You look at a program like Carleton, for example, Carleton College in Minnesota, and they have around a 50% conversion rate year in and year out. Not just because they have online ambassadors, but every solicitation, even mail pieces, comes from someone with a name and a face and someone that the donors might know. So very important, not just for the annual fund, but for the major gift program. And the reason why it's important for the major gift program as well is as follows. 85% of millionaires use social media. That's compared to 66% of the general population. And this is a study from Fidelity Investments, so we're not necessarily just looking at those who give or donors. We're looking at everybody who has $1 million or more of assets, and 85% of them use social media. So folks with money are using social media, not just online, not just email and text, those things too, but social media at a vastly higher rate than the general population. Same is true of some other digital tools. A slightly more recent study looking at mobile pay. This is Accenture looking at mobile pay. Again, a large study of wealthy consumers, meaning those who make $250,000 a year or more. 55% of them use mobile pay. That's compared to 40% of the general population, and shockingly, compared to 52% of millennials. In other words, a baby boomer who has wealth is more likely to use their mobile device to pay for something than a millennial. That's really something that kind of puts some concepts, I think, on their head. Now, again, these are stats. Stats are one thing. Real world studies, stories, and anecdotes are what I think really sell the case, and we have plenty of those too. This dates back to the first Giving Day we've been a part of more than 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now at Florida State University. We've done since then more than 4 dozen Giving Days, but even during the very first one, we had this big vibrant event, lots of things taking place online, so we had a good deal of activity on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, you name it. And during that first great give at Florida State University, a donor called up. This is a prospect who had never given a gift to Florida State before, although they were identified as someone who has wealth and could be a major gift prospect. They did make their first gift during that Giving Day, and they made $100,000 gift on the spot, specifically citing the energy and enthusiasm around the Giving Day as the reason why they made that gift. It's happened many times since then, to the point where we don't wait for accidents anymore. The Giving Days we plan have a significant major donor element to them, and we usually see 7-figure results because of that significant major donor element. And in some cases, of course, we'll have some gift officers who want to move a big gift towards a Giving Day, and that's okay. Depends on how you want to structure things, because at a minimum, that's giving that donor the attention of having their name attached to a matching challenge, and that can be viewed as stewardship, which is valuable. But what we want to do is we want to not move money around. We want to create new major gifts as a result of digital, and that's part of this equation too. Again, we see it happen all the time where we have these big donors. In this case, a single donor campaign, a single person online ambassador leveraging their network, raising $1.4 million, most of it new money in form of $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 gifts because, and this is going to be a theme that we're going to consider throughout this presentation here, because those who have wealth tend to know other people who have wealth, and that can unlock a lot of new wealth for an organization. So what we're always doing when we're searching for our online ambassadors, because most of our online ambassador efforts start in the annual fund, we're keeping our eyes open for those major gift donors and those leadership annual giving donors who happen to pop up as influencers themselves. Folks who have a lot of money and also have a lot of impact online and on social media. So that's step one, making sure that we're not letting anyone slip through the cracks, finding those potential online ambassadors whose networks might have a great deal more wealth in them because they themselves have a great deal more wealth. We're looking at things like Facebook feeds. We're trying to understand, once we find those online ambassadors, those highly active digital users who are major gift prospects, what is their Facebook activity telling us? What are they liking that we don't know about? What areas of campus, what programs, what part of our mission have we not talked to them about yet that they might have a strong affinity for that we can tell because they're liking the exact same thing on Facebook? Same with Twitter. We had a campaign where we did a giving day, and we had a gift from a young alumni. I think this alumnus was like 26, 27 years old, and we expected $25, $50 gift from someone like that, and they gave $1,000. And because we had our large gift protocol in place, that tipped us off to do some more research on this individual. Looked at their Twitter bio, and their Twitter bio said Silicon Valley entrepreneur. No one in the database had any idea. No one on campus knew that this person was a millionaire, but they are a millionaire. They gave a big gift, so using a digital campaign, we identified their big gift capacity. Looking at their social media profiles, we understood a lot more about who they were, about the capacity that they might have to give, about how we might want to steward them and thank them, which we did on social media, which that donor was very, very happy about, as well as other areas they might want to support. In this case, it could be computer science as opposed to the business degree that they had, for example. Same is true, volunteer activity on LinkedIn, really anything on a social media network that can tell you more about a person than we might already know through our traditional prospect development means. And that's what this is about, really, is plugging in with prospect development, with the prospect researchers, and building a far more colorful, precise, and accurate stewardship solicitation plan, solicitation plan for the donor based on psychographic data. Not just the demographic data that tells us they live in a rich zip code, but the psychographic data that tells us they're interested in renewable energy or agriculture or entrepreneurship. Those are the type of things that we can pull from psychographic profiles. And this is the work that we're doing right now with our clients and having a lot of early success, where we're learning some things that we simply would not have known without the digital tools. It starts from an ambassador program. It delves into social listening. It helps us put together far more effective, far more efficient, more pinpoint solicitation strategies where we're able to better engage these major donors. And we're better able to ask them for things like matches and challenges during a giving day, because if we have someone who starts as an online ambassador, is very active online, is very active on social media, has large gift capacity, when we put that solicitation plan together for them, we know we should attach that to a match or a challenge opportunity on a giving day, because they will appreciate the giving day, again, because they're so active in that digital space. And this is where we move from, talking to the major gifts program 5 or 6 weeks before a giving day and trying to squeeze some matches or challenges in based on gifts that already exist, to getting out 12, 14, 16 months ahead of a giving day and working these matches and challenges into solicitation plans for the prospects whose behavior, psychographic profile tells us they will be very receptive to an ask like this, and it works. So now we're not moving $500,000 gifts over, we're creating new $500,000 gifts based on the research we've done, in part through things like social media and social listening. There's lots of things we can do. The matches and challenges is one aspect of it. The other is attaching personal crowdfunding campaigns or large gift crowdfunding campaigns, and this is where it plugs in so well to those 6-figure plus crowdfunding efforts. Again, if we know we have something that matters a lot to a donor, we might know that through traditional means, we might know that through conversations, we might know that this person is active online because of some identification tools that we have, or maybe we learn something entirely new about this person based on their online activity. And then we can put together a crowdfunding campaign where they will get behind it. And again, it's really beneficial to get these major donors involved because their networks have so much capacity. We're seeing crowdfunding, we're seeing micro giving days, people-built campaigns, individual campaigns. A lot of these major donors obviously have things that matter to them, and if they can help raise even more money beyond their gift through digital channels that they're already very familiar with, we can have a lot of success. Marquette campaign, I wish I was personally involved on this one. It's something I learned about after the fact, but my goodness, did they do a good job over in Milwaukee. Working with one donor, first year, they had this, I'd say semi-celebrity. I think, depending on what television shows you watch, you might know Marcus Lemonis quite well. He has a Shark Tank-like show, I think, on CNBC. But more than anything else, he's very, very active in the digital space. Absolutely an online ambassador. Absolutely someone who promotes Marquette on a regular basis. It's okay to have a celebrity. I don't want to say that celebrities are totally worthless. We talked a little bit earlier how you want to have sort of that, average Joe or average Jane who has a strong network. We do want that. Those authentic ambassadors are important. Gold standard is if you have someone who is a celebrity, but who also loves the institution and often talks about the institution so that people in the institution also know this person to be an advocate for the organization. That's the case that we have here. And using Twitter, using email, a lot of times these campaigns work best when they are in conjunction with all the channels. Multi-channel is critical. So even direct mail, even phone program can enhance these campaigns. But same is true, of course, of email, and then, of course, using the influencers themselves to reach the network. So anyway, year one, $300,000 match was put up by Marcos Lemonis. That led to more than twice as much in giving from the community to raise more than $1 million. They did it again this year, significantly higher dollar amounts and stakes. This time, Mr. Lemonis put up $1.5 million for a match, and again, that was more than doubled for $3.2 million raised total. This is, I think, almost a new way of looking at the giving day, focused on one individual. But if you have the right individual who has the social media clout influence, you can make big things happen. This is so popular, that this concept with major gift donors, I think, is so popular that we see it happening by accident. A few years ago, we were doing a project for World Vision back when I was at Benz Whaley Flessner, and we had this campaign where a major donor went on to the crowdfunding campaign and set up her own project, really sort of unbeknownst to the folks in the institution and the organization, and she set a huge $60,000 goal. It was her 60th birthday, so she wanted to raise $60,000 in 24 hours. In most cases, if one individual wanted to do this for their birthday and they said, how about I set a goal at $60,000, we'd say that's preposterous, drop a 0 or 2, and then we'll be good. But she did not do that. She went ahead and tried to raise $60,000, and she was successful. Again, she's a major donor, and she has a network full of people who are also potential major donors. 12 first-time donors gave to World Vision through this birthday campaign at gifts of between $1,000 and $5,000. Making them immediate leadership annual giving donors and certainly major gift potential donors down the line. And this is not unusual. Team World Vision is their running, cycling, walking event around the world, and they have about 32,000 fundraisers who do that every year, or at least in this year, 2015. The top 18% of them will be considered those major fundraisers, and even though it's only the top 18%, they're responsible for 80% of all the fundraising that takes place online. So we have major gift donors and prospects who are out there who are doing this voluntarily. We have others who are being supported by the institution. We see the results there. Again, what we want to do here is not insert digital as a way to move around gifts or cannibalize anything. What we want to do here is we want to insert digital so that we can grow a major gifts program, modernize it, and make it more effective than it's ever been. We're doing that right now with a lot of our clients. So I would certainly love to have that conversation with you after the fact, but I know we have a lot of questions to get to, and I want to turn it back over to Jonathan now for some of those questions.
Fabulous. Yeah, we're good. So we're back here. So Justin, thank you. That was amazing. I love looking at all those examples. It's fantastic to see. So firstly, just to say, please do keep asking questions or start asking questions. We have a couple that have come up. I'm going to ask Justin a couple of questions now. So one of the things we get asked all the time is, so we've found this potential major donor for one of our campaigns. We think they could be a good challenge or match funder. We found their social profiles. We can see they're interested. How should we go about actually making that ask? Do we do that on the social platform itself, on email, on the phone? Like, what do we do now we've found this person? And we get asked this all the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what works best.
And this is where we feel it's the perfect marriage of the traditional approach to major gift fundraising that is significantly enhanced by new data, by new tactics, by modern tools. It's probably always going to be the case where gift officers are at the center of that relationship and managing that relationship. And whether we're asking for a huge gift for a match or a challenge, or whether we're talking about a gift strictly to support an existing campaign, the ask itself doesn't change too much. It's the tactics around it, the reasoning for it, the way we're able to arrive at that ask, the way we're able to be more planful about it, the way the data tells us that this is what this person is most interested in, so this is what you should lead with, this is how you should structure that ask. That's what we're getting from the digital side of things. We're plugging digital into the prospect development stage of the process, the prospect development stage of the process, more than really anything else, and developing far more precise, pinpoint, efficient solicitation strategies that really helps gift officers be a lot more successful when they go and meet face-to-face with the donor. But that component of it, asking the donor and how we ask the donor for that gift, that doesn't change much. That's still up to the gift officer to deliver on that. What we're doing is giving the gift officer far more information and far better tools to be more effective and successful in their efforts.
Yeah, fabulous. And then you've talked a little bit about this already, but again, we get this question a lot, which is organizations often approach us a little concerned that when they get their major donors involved in some way in an online campaign or a digital campaign, that they're cannibalizing other giving programs and other efforts that they're making with those donors. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about some of the examples. I mean, you've got some great ones in the presentation, but kind of what happened next, if you will? So, you know, when the donors got engaged and involved, did that actually affect their long-term giving behavior? Did they give differently? Did they give to different things? You know, was it really cannibalizing an existing relationship for the purposes of digital?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a valid concern for sure. You know what? The only difference here in terms of the donor is they're probably going to be happier because they're giving to exactly what they want to support in exactly the way they want to support it. So this should create a much better, richer, fuller relationship with the donor over time. There's no reason why this should cannibalize anything. And it's all the reason in the world why, again, it should be part of a larger strategy. Digital should be at the table and on an equal footing with every other tool you have for prospect development and for building these strategies. Because if you do that, then again, we're enhancing the process, we're understanding our donors better, we're understanding their desires more, we're getting a better, clearer idea of their capacity, and we're able to have a better solicitation that we should be mapping out 12, 18, 24 months before we actually make that ask. Likewise, if we're doing this and we are engaging some of them as ambassadors and putting them front and center behind crowdfunding campaigns and giving day campaigns, that's going to attract new supporters as well. People in their networks are going to take notice. These major gift donors tend to be competitive individuals. We can leverage that, and we can find a lot more new supporters and build our prospect pipeline as well. But there should, as long as you have a smart strategy in place here, there's absolutely no reason why this should be cannibalizing anything any more than having, you know, good wealth data based on a zip code would somehow cannibalize things. It doesn't really even make sense if you think about it that way. What we're doing here is we're enhancing our knowledge about the donors and giving them a better experience, and that is a win for everyone.
Fabulous. And then my final question for you, because it's something we actually see a number of our clients struggling with, is how to achieve real cross-team support for campaigns, so crowdfunding or giving days. You know, so when you're talking about engaging major donors in a digital effort, those are typically two very different parts of perhaps the same overall team, but they perhaps don't have all that much interaction with each other. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about where the kind of communications, planning, internal project management stuff sort of comes from, and how, if you're sat in the more small scale giving or alumni relations program side, how you really make a case to your major donor team to get them actively engaged with your program.
This is critical, and it's why we're always so grateful and excited when we have support from someone in a leadership level position. If someone in a leadership level position can understand the value in this and can see the value in this and see how this is going to strengthen every aspect of their development operation, we're in really good shape. I always go back to a giving day we did about a year or two ago at UC Santa Barbara when I was with the Scale Funder platform and Ruffalo and Noel Levitz. And you know, what made that work so well was the AVC, the Associate Vice Chancellor, Beverly Colgate, very early on said this is a development-wide effort. We're going to involve major gifts. We're going to talk to our donors. We're going to do this in the annual fund as well. We're going to have marketing and communications support this. It was all hands on deck, and it was a tremendous event. They had one of the better giving days they've ever been a part of. They blew past their goals. They had major donors who were thrilled to be a part of the campaign. It was a really healthy event for the culture of philanthropy at UCSB. So when we have that kind of support from leadership, when we can work with leadership, and when they really understand this and see how this can grow their program, that gets everyone rowing in the same direction, and that sets us up for a very big win, not just on a giving day, but a lot of big wins to come with the major gifts program as well.
Fabulous. Okay, so we do have a couple of questions that have come in. If you have questions that we don't get to answering or that are burning issues for you, please do either send them in now or send them in after the webinar, and we'll get you answers to them for sure. The first question that's come in is how long should a crowdfunding campaign be run for? I think we probably both have thoughts on this, but as you can see from the success of giving days, you can run a pretty successful digital campaign in a very, very short period of time, a day or sometimes less than a day. You can also run a pretty successful one over 6 to 8 weeks. Once you start going over about 8 weeks, you start getting into the diminishing marginal benefit of extending. And in fact, often the shorter the better. So most of the successful campaigns try and keep to 2 to 4 weeks, even if they are that long. Obviously, the longer you make a campaign, the more time you have to get people signed up to actually advocate for it. But you do, the flip side is you lose a little bit of momentum and pressure on people giving within that very short period of time. But you can see it can be anything from from a day or so up to sort of probably 4 to 6 weeks, I'd say, and very much depends on the strategy and the communications that you've planned during that period. Justin, I don't know if you have a view on that as well.
Yeah, urgency is always something that helps. You know, if you're talking about a giving day, especially, I think you build all this excitement towards it. It's this big bang of an event. A lot of resources. You really hit your ambassadors hard that day. That's okay because they planned on that. They know you're going to get 3, 5, 6 emails sent out to them, and it's this huge flurry of activity, and then everyone kind of take a rest. The more traditional crowdfunding, I think 30 days is usually what we would recommend. You know, that's plenty of time to get a few emails out to your networks to really work your network so they become familiar with what you're doing. You can get a few asks in and get close to your goal. But generally speaking, yeah, I would agree with pretty much everything you said there, Jonathan.
Okay. There's another burning question that's just come in, which is a fabulous one. What tips or advice do you have to retain donors that have given to a crowdfunding campaign? So this is about that stewardship journey. Justin, I'd be really interested in what you've experienced out in the US. You know, once people have given, how do we best engage and retain them?
So there's been another very popular service line for us is stewardship of digital donors, and it's amazing how much low-hanging fruit there is here, because so many donors who give first across a digital channel or give across a digital channel period go right into the standard stewardship approach and get massive mail pieces sent their way and have their phones called once a week, every week, until they finally pick up and make that complete happen. And there's some data out there that will tell you that multi-channel is important. That's absolutely true. But what we're talking about here is not multi-channel. What we're talking about here is old traditional channels applied to donors who give through a new tactic. If someone makes a gift to you online, there has to be a strong digital stewardship component as well. You have to see where that gift came in. We create donor themes. So if someone gives to support, you know, canine research, they have a vet med track. If someone gives to support athletics, they have an athletics track. If someone gives to support business, so on and so forth, where we're getting as targeted and precise with that stewardship as we can, so we're giving them impact of giving messages. We like to give at least 3 emails where we talk about how their gift helped made the institution stronger or better, or, you know, made the world a better place before we send another solicitation. And we want that all to take place online if they made a gift online. Not to say we don't also put them in a direct mail pool, not to say we don't also call them. There's a lot of data that says calling someone and thanking them for a gift can be tremendously beneficial to retaining that donor, something like 20 percentage points better when you have a thank you stewardship phone program in place. But the digital component has to be there. If someone makes a gift online, they shouldn't, you know, the next time they hear from you online should not be another email to talk about the next giving day, for example. It should be a strong process with great content, really good email that tells the story of the gift, again, back to your positive storytelling component, Jonathan, and reinforces why they made that gift on the channel where they made that gift. Just to take it even one step further, with online ambassadors, if someone makes a gift through an online ambassador, if you have a sophisticated enough stewardship program, that online ambassador should be one of the channels who's delivering impacted giving messaging across Facebook, across Twitter, through email to that donor who gave through that ambassador, because that's the channel that donor trusts. So there's a lot of room to grow there. It's one of the things that we're working on with some clients right now, growing digital stewardship. And we know from some early returns that it makes a big difference in terms of double-digit percentage points on how well we actually retain these donors.
Okay, now we're approaching the end, but there are a couple of fabulous questions that have come up. So one of them around which social media channels work best for digital giving. I will just have a quick stab at that, but we'll answer that properly as well afterwards. It's been pretty clear from our work so far that Facebook is a killer channel for this. It's partly to do with the trust and the networks that you're connected to on it. So if you think about the advocacy program, who influences me and how do I make a decision, it's largely the people I'm most closely connected to. So Facebook is a top channel, but that's not to say that the other channels don't have a big impact too. And then a wonderful question about how we can marry this together with alumni relations. We will have to take that one offline, I'm afraid, but it is a great question, and Justin and I will work up an answer for you afterwards and make sure we've sent that over. But in the interests of closing pretty much on time, almost bang on, we're going to take the step back now and end the webinar. We need, if you can, a link. There's a link being posted on feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you learned, what was an issue, if there were any problems with this, and what kind of topics you'd be interested in the future. So please do fill out that feedback survey. The link's being posted now in the chat box. Yeah, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us, Justin. Do you just want to say thank you as well, and we can then we can wrap up.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, everyone. We'd love to hear from you. Groundworkdigital.com, everything we talked about, we're doing this with our clients right now. We'd love to do it with you. Thank you for giving us an hour of your time today.
Yeah, thank you all. We'll see you again soon. As you know, Hubbub's running a series of webinars, and the next one will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we shall keep you posted. Thank you again, everybody. Signing off.